Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio, presented by the National Bicycle Dealers Association. This is where bicycle retailers, industry innovators, and advocates come together for real conversations about what's happening right now in bike retail, from cargo bikes to carbon fiber. Each episode explores the challenges you're facing, the opportunities ahead, and the people driving our industry forward. We go beyond the surface to uncover practical strategies, fresh perspectives, and authentic stories from shop owners who've been where you are. Whether you're navigating staffing challenges, adapting to market shifts, or looking for your next breakthrough idea, this is your community. Since 1946, the NBDA has been in the trenches with specialty bicycle retailers, providing education, advocacy, and connection when you need it most. Want to be a part of this community? Learn more about NBDA membership at nbda.com.
The Women in the Bicycle Industry Summit is coming to Bentonville, Arkansas on June 11th. Our Weeby Summit is free to attend and value-packed. Expect to connect with peers and mentors, hear diverse perspectives from bike shop owners, brand leaders, and advocates that are shaping the industry. And take some time for you, explore career growth and networking opportunities. Plus, the Weeby Summit coincides with our Retailer Summit Central and Bentonville Bike Fest, giving attendees a full week of events and a perfect reason to make the trip. Register now at nbda.com, and we'll see you in Bentonville. Welcome to Bicycle Retail Radio. We're so glad you're here. The bicycle industry is facing a real challenge. Participation is declining, and while e-bikes have helped reshape who's riding and how, they haven't reversed a long-term trend. Growing ridership is essential to the future of every bike shop. That's why the NBDA convenes its Growing Ridership and Retailer Foot Traffic panel 3 times a year. We bring together retailers, suppliers, and industry leaders to focus on what's actually working. This episode features our May 19th panel, where, with the help of some very special guests, we tackled 2 topics. First, how retailers and brands can capitalize on the momentum in women's sports to grow women's cycling. Some of our industry friends share real-life examples of what partnerships can look like on the ground in New York City. Then we shifted to a bigger question. Are we too dependent on the bike shop as the entry point for new riders? And how do we meet customers where they are already? It's a rich conversation you won't want to miss, so let's go.
Welcome to our Growing Ridership and Retailer Foot Traffic panel. We're very thankful for our panel members and those joining us today. This is our annual meeting. We have 3 a year, and it was this advocacy panel was focused on 2025. That's when we got together this initiative aimed to unite the industry to take immediate action to develop strategies that increase bicycle riding participation. This is a critical and timely effort for the future of the American bicycle industry. So this platform serves as a place for industry experts to come together, exchange proactive ideas and questions, and hopefully develop solutions to grow ridership and renew interest in cycling. We focus on engaging diverse rider groups. Today's conversation will just do that, and improving rider experience, enhancing infrastructure, and strengthening the engagement of our riders. So the panel members today, these panel members and speakers have volunteered their time and expertise to today's discussion. Tremendous energy has gone behind the scenes into making this a platform and a resource not just for retailers, but the industry at large. Our goal is that these panel discussions foster continuous growth and collaborative ideas to grow bicycle riding participation. So if you're here as a participant, thank you for being here. And we welcome your participation by placing questions into the chat or into the Q&A function. And throughout the event, we will get to your questions. Some questions will be answered live, and others we might just address back in the chat function. This conversation is also being recorded and will be available on the NBDA YouTube channel. If you haven't been over to our YouTube channel, check it out. There's lots of recordings, lots of good stuff. All right, so just some words for the good, a reminder of what we're doing here. This is a platform for experts to share ideas. This is a very safe, welcoming environment. So we listen to people's ideas without judgment. We might have different opinions, but that's okay. Sometimes hearing other people's opinions gets us thinking a little bit differently, and we can take what we want and leave what we don't want. So this is a very safe place. We're here, engaged, and ready to learn for the next 60 minutes. So we have two topics on today's agenda. And how the forum will progress today is I will read the topic question. Our panel members who have volunteered to speak on the topic will present, and then we'll have an open kind of response and discussion following. So our first topic is one that's of special interest to me. The topic reads this: riding the wave of women's sports growth. How can retailers and brands work together to grow women's cycling and support rider development? Fabulous, right? I'm very thankful for this topic being one that we're discussing today. So today we have Sam Brehans of Specialized, Sarah Mann and McKenna Foster of Always Cycling and Racing Team, and A.M. Van Doren, a bike fitter and Revolutions. They're going to all share how partnerships between brands, bike shops, teams, and fitters are helping grow women's cycling in New York City. And our hope is that their perspective highlights real world examples of what's working and how retailers can be part of this momentum. So I'm going to turn it over to the team and then we'll go from there.
Thanks so much, Heather. I'm AM and I'm going to kick us off here. So I'm going to share the slides we put together. Can we all see the slides? Great. Okay. So here is us. As you can see, McKenna and Sarah are co-captains, sorry, laggy here, co-captains of Always. And then I am a fitter that works with the team, and Sam is at Specialized. He is here locally, and he has been a big support to us over the years with getting team members on the right bikes. We're talking a little bit about what we're seeing more globally outside of cycling, and really highlighting the fact that across sports, across the industry, and the various ways we interact with sports, there's a massive growth in women's sports in the last few years. As you can see, the numbers pulled here from 2022, we're looking at a lift of something like 250 to 340%, which is pretty massive. Unprecedented growth, investment, representation, and pathways to participation across all of these different sports. So where does that leave cycling? I would say no one in this meeting is probably surprised to hear about the issue of gender parity in cycling. It's a pretty known issue. You can see a few samples we have here. I did my best to find stats, but there's a little bit of limited data. Out of the UK, we have a ride-sharing app that presented 20% of their respondees as identifying as women, whereas 70% were male. Via Strava, we have something like 45% of the ride efforts recorded on the app in 2023 were from men, or 45% less from women. But encouraging news, we are seeing growth in this area. From 2024, we had an 11% lift year over year, and we're trying to share what we've been doing in New York City. We're lucky to have a diverse riding and flourishing racing scene out here that has been supporting these efforts, moving the needle in this way. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah and McKenna to really get into what Always the team is doing, and then Sam and I will come back in to talk a little bit about how we've been able to support.
Thanks, Sam. Hi, everyone. Sarah Mann. I'm a co-captain of Always. I joined our club in 2024 and then became co-captain earlier this year, along with McKenna and our broader leadership team. So AM has just walked through some of the opportunities that I think exist in women's cycling. Again, there is a definite disparity, but is growing. And that's something that we are seeing firsthand with our club in New York. And we'll share a little bit about how we've grown and the partnership that we've cultivated with AM and Sam and their brands and their shops, and how we are growing the team from there. So we are the largest women's trans femmes non-binary cycling club in New York City. We're at about 100 members right now. We typically have a wait list for folks to join. We recruit annually. And we find that there is really just growing interest and demand to join groups like ours, from riders in every borough in New York City, which is spans pretty large. Um, we also have a pretty good alumni network of folks who have graduated to other teams, have moved to other cities, states, and abroad. And we even have some members who are currently on maternity leave, which is a first for us, but just a testament to the diversity of riders that we have as part of our club. Average member is somewhere between 22 and 40 years old. So really, we're seeing a lot of riders who are early in their cycling journeys, whether they've just evolved from being, commuters on college campuses to commuting across New York City to riding, racing, and, doing big events, nationally and globally. Our mission really is to increase inclusivity and belonging in the sport, and also ensuring that riders have access to resources to support and pursue their cycling goals. And that isn't just about necessarily our community, but again, a lot of that comes in through the partnerships that we have. And one of the biggest goals, I think, as well for our club is just creating space. And that isn't just off bike and learning in spaces with, AM and Sam at the shop, or, doing a fit, but also, of course, on bike, we're doing weekly rides in Prospect Park, Central Park, weekend rides, outside of the city. And then folks are going to major events globally that I'll talk about as well. And both AM and Sam, I think, have supported the club and race team in a way that I think has created a lot of space for riders to grow. And this, I think, could help serve as a bit of a model for, if these groups exist in your communities, great. If they don't, how you might be able to start building them and developing more women cyclists in your communities. So I kind of look at this as a little bit of like a flywheel effect for our club. And the club started about 5 or 6 years ago, kind of outcropping of the pandemic. I think definitely also when there's been a huge upswing in cycling more broadly. So what we've seen really is that members who are joining and participating, they're hearing about us like through word of mouth, or they're hearing about us on Instagram, or they're learning about us from AM or Sam or other folks that we've worked with across the community. And when they, join or they ride with us, they're hearing about some really cool things that our members are doing, from like starting out racing as a complete novice, myself included, to doing ultra distance races like Unbound in the next few weeks. A couple of our members just got back from La Stat in Spain, which was an ultra race over the course of several days in Spain and Portugal. And this, I think, helps people really see what's possible. And it's, events like these that people are going to in the community are things that I think many of us had never heard of until, a rider here or there said, like, I'm going to go try this. Does anybody want to do it too? And people say yes and they join, but also the people who don't, kind of look at that rider, it's somebody that they're cycling with, once or twice a week, doing laps with, and like, oh, if that person can do it, like maybe I can too. Maybe I want to start smaller than a self-supported ultra race over the course of several days in a foreign country, but they really learn what, their potential could be. And once they sort of see that, they're like, oh, wow, if I want to do these things, like I might need to get faster, I might need to train more, I might need to figure out how to ride farther. I might need to be more comfortable on my bike. And when they set up all these goals, that's kind of when you get to the next phase of the flywheel of they, probably have to make some purchases, and make some investments in themselves. And that can often involve like one, getting a fit so that they know what they need to be looking for, what they need to be, changing on their bike as far as components. But also to maybe just buying a complete new bike, which is like something that I did after I learned more, got more interested in gravel riding and realized like, there might be a better bike out there for me, and was able to do that. So I think this is really where we see people kind of like making those investments in themselves. And then, once they ride more and they're probably spending more and like at least the upkeep on their bike at minimum, they're growing in the sport. They're like growing the community. They're bringing friends in. They're getting more people involved. They're having conversations, casually when they're like meeting people on ride park or outside of the city. Um, and some people again, like we were saying, we've got graduates who have, gone on to start new teams, or like some have even gone pro. And that's just such an incredible, again, another part of the journey where people start to get inspired and want to participate more and want to join. And it's really endless. It's sort of like the self-perpetuating thing. And working with Hilltop and Revolutions, our club members are becoming, I think, lifetime riders. Obviously, we have yet to see that. There's many, many years left in personally our riding journeys, but those of our club members as well. But because they have partners, and the support of a community of people who are committed to seeing them, have a great time on their bikes, like they can actually achieve that. And we ride more because of it, and it's I think what keeps us coming back, to work with them when we need to tinker with our bikes as well. Um, I think we can probably jump to the next slide. We also wanted to, oh, well, yeah, that one. We also wanted to give everyone a little bit of a look under the hood at what our Instagram metrics look like. Obviously, I'm sure for a lot of you, social media is a big factor in just getting people in the door, getting, interested in, what you might have available. Um, I think also it's one of our number one benefits for our partners as a club is knowing like what the reach could be if we are promoting them or including content, in our posts that features them. It's a pretty hyper local, like specialized, no pun intended, group of um, female cyclists in New York City. This is just a snapshot of what the last month looks like. So we're seeing like 30,000 plus people looking at our profile, which is crazy for a club that only has 100 members. Um, Obviously, a lot of those are our followers, but like a really good chunk, like, approaching half almost are people that don't follow us. So that's just people finding us or seeing shared content or like cross promoted stuff with our members or with our partners. The age range again is really squarely in like where our membership is. That 25 to 44 is, I think, almost 90%. And then really significant, proportion of women, looking at our stuff. That's 80%, which is just like so specialized and great. And again, these are people who, many of them we know personally, we're interacting with on a regular basis. They're coming to our rides, or we're seeing them, out at events in the community. But it really does offer, I think, an opportunity for, partners and shops and, brands that we work with to reach a really significant group, and one that I think is very much committed to growing in the sport and investing in themselves. I will pause there and kick it over to McKenna, who's going to talk about some of, the testimonials and what we're hearing from our club.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everyone. I'm McKenna. I'm the other co-captain of Always. Similar to Sarah, I joined last year and got really into this club and cycling, and now I'm one of the co-captains, so really excited to be here representing us. Yeah, as Sarah said, we wanted to share some specific examples of women who have joined the club and really found the space to thrive in different disciplines, and really grow their relationship with cycling and bikes. And a lot of that is through the support of our partners and, the support we get from AM and Sam specifically. So first we have Leah, who was actually one of our co-captains last year. She joined as a pretty casual cyclist, but with a hunger to get stronger and compete. She really fell in love with bike in the club. We like to talk about how we love bike in this club, and it's like our whole mantra is just loving bike. And Leah is someone who really embodies that. She started competing in triathlons just last year and now races in the professional field for Ironman 70.3. And a lot of her journey getting into triathlon, getting more into cycling as someone who started out more as a runner and more of a casual cyclist. A lot of that journey really was supported by Sam and AM as she started to invest more in the sport and equipment and like getting fits with AM and like really just dialing in her own performance and her career. So, um, yeah, Leah's like a really cool story of someone who, uh, really found a love for cycling in this club and then went on to do great things. Um, Andy is someone who came to us with a lot of knowledge and experience already as an ultra endurance athlete and gravel rider, but she's continued to thrive in our club and through the connections she's made in our club. She actually just raced in the first pro non-binary field at Mid-South Gravel, which was really cool to see. And with the support of Sam and the specialized team, she's been able to really give back a lot of her knowledge about bike maintenance. We just had a tubeless setup workshop at Hilltop with the team there and with Andy leading. Um, so it's been really cool to like have that space and have the ability to um, continue to share knowledge and make sure people are learning and growing and feeling more confident in their skills and knowledge. Um, so yeah, I mean, that was really valuable for us and I think for the Hilltop team, not only just for making sure people are learning more about their bikes and giving people the space to learn in, a way that's not super intimidating, but it also got people into the shop environment and was a really approachable way for us to, meet the team and build relationships with the staff, which has really gone a long way, I think, over the years working with Hilltop, just having the ability to be in the shop and meeting the team, and it makes people more comfortable going in when they have issues or want to buy something. It just makes the whole experience less intimidating. So that has been, I think, really helpful for a lot of people on the team. Lastly, I think I personally am a good example of someone who joined Always and then became a valuable bike consumer. I love spending money on bikes. I joined Always as someone who really liked riding bikes, but and had a desire to compete. I have been a competitive athlete my whole life, but I didn't really have any community in the sport, and I knew nothing about the opportunities out there to compete and race. But through joining the club, I learned about the racing scene in New York City. As AM said, it's flourishing. There's a lot of opportunity to race in the city. So I really started investing more in equipment and training and have been having some success, which has been really rewarding and it just makes me want to do more with it. Um, so that's been really cool. I've also gotten really into maintenance and learning more about my own projects. I just started working at a bike shop. So, I'm someone who came in a little bit more casual and has really turned into somebody whose entire life revolves around bikes. And then on the next slide, so we also do just want to emphasize that it's not just about racing and people who compete. Our core goal on Always, as Sarah said, really is just creating a space for community and belonging, and building up everyone's cycling journey, regardless of what that looks like. Because when people feel empowered and equipped with knowledge of the interests they have, they are more sustainable bike consumers, and people who are going to stick with the sport more long term. If people feel comfortable on their bikes, if they feel like they know about bikes, they're more likely to um, purchase them and spend a lot of time with them. So we ran a poll, just a quick informal poll among our members to ask people how their relationship with cycling has changed since joining, and then what has influenced them to purchase a new bike since joining, if they've done so. And the common themes here really were just that the community has really filled our members' lives with more opportunities to ride their bikes, and having knowledge, confidence, and a sense of belonging, and feeling like they deserve to have a nice bike has really led people to make bigger purchases, invest in themselves, and just dive deeper into the sport. And I think I will pass it back to AM or Sam.
I think AM's stuck on mute.
Yeah, I moved my little toolbar and I couldn't access the mute. But yeah, so I just want to talk quickly about sizing. I think we're probably all pretty familiar with the fact that there are complex problems that go into why women's bikes on the whole are, or not, I shouldn't say even women's bikes, but bikes for people under 5'5", 5'6", which the average woman in the US falls into that category, are not designed as well as bikes that are larger. I have a few more notes at the end of the slides. We're happy to share these around if anyone would like to see those. But essentially, we deal with, as a fitter, the 700C wheel constraint with long effective top tubes, especially in recent years as the average road bike moves more towards a TT bike in design and the whole thing stretches out. We also work with a lot of saddle design flaws that don't support women, as well as a lot of the sit bone measurement strategies are inaccurate and place people, especially women, on too wide of saddles. We're also working with just disproportionality in bar width and crank length, which all add up in making it a more challenging, less comfortable, and less efficient riding experience. So in the vein of supporting women and creating a context where a group like Always is able to thrive, a lot of that has been I've been able to support either by retrofitting women's bikes, so helping them find bikes that helping them make their bikes work, putting them on better bikes for the future, helping them understand what works for them and their bodies. And then also that information is now kind of baseline in the organization so they can pass it in between each other and work collectively there. And this is especially in the context of we're fortunate to be having a partnership where Specialized that makes quite good bikes in the smaller sizes. We're starting at a good baseline, and still McKenna and Sarah both have had customizations on their bikes more specifically to their body just because of some gaps in the market. So the question here is just how do we expect to gain loyal women's ridership when the average woman is too small for the average smallest stock bike? And that means proportionality. The woman is working harder than the man riding next to her on the group ride. We wonder why she doesn't come back, and he does. I'm going to pass it over to Sam to talk about some brand side and shop side best practices, and then we'll open it up for questions. And like I said, a couple resources at the end for everyone.
Sweet. Thanks, AM. I'm Sam. I'm the brand development manager for NYC for basically the tri-state area. When I first began working with Always, I was a store manager in one of our Specialized owned stores, which is called Hilltop Williamsburg, even though it's owned by Specialized. And I just want to share a couple numbers off the top of that. Relationship began around maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4, depending on how we want to round. We have since then, for our Williamsburg store, we have 57 new riders in our database that are affiliated with Always, and that has translated to $185,000 in revenue. So we're not talking about like something that's not worth our time, right? It is absolutely worth our time. Because we're on the brand side best practices slide, I think that something that's been a challenge for me is having the bravery to speak up in the meetings where those of us who have power are able to use that power to move things forward. And I think if you are someone like me who has a position of power where we can move the needle in one direction or another, my main message to you is to be brave and to speak up and to say the things that you are maybe a bit afraid to say or think that the person next to you might not approve of. You need to say them anyways. It is your responsibility as someone in power to move the industry towards what we want it to be. And so that requires speaking up. That requires advocating for all of the things that AM was just talking about when you're in your sales meetings. It requires advocating for proper staffing. A lot of it is common sense, but it is not always common sense to speak up and stick your neck out for something that's important to you. And that would be the main thing that I would want to push on the brand side practices, is to be brave and speak up for what you see as moving that conversation forward in the correct direction. AM, can we go back to the shop best practices slide? So for the shop best practices, I think as I've been thinking about what I want to say today, I want to point out that our relationship with Always did begin with a discount. That is where we started. However, over the course of these 3 years, thanks to many things, the outlook of the industry, brand strategy from Specialized, that discount has actually gone away. We no longer have a discount deal with Always. And yet, I would say, and maybe Sarah and McKenna and AM feel this way as well or can chime in on it later, I would say that the partnership is just as strong now as it has ever been when we had a financial discount to play. And I think that is because of some of the things that we've done from the shop side to create the community that Sarah and McKenna were talking about. Number one is to train your staff. And train your staff. There is no like secret code for how to help non-male riders. It happens to be that the same empathy that you need to bring to the conversation for a non-male rider is going to help when you're working with every rider of every background. Ask questions before you tell stories. Try to talk about the rider's bike rather than your own bike. These are common sense, empathy-based sales strategies that help everyone and build community. Furthermore, and this one is possibly the most important, and what I think has been most powerful, is to find the leaders that exist in that riding community and raise them up and step out of the way. As a person who is managing a shop, I'm literally, or was managing a shop, I was literally the key holder to a space that is often not provided for women cyclists and women in cycling. As that key holder, if you want to push this forward, you need to open that space for that tubeless class that was referenced earlier. We've done it twice. Andy taught it both times. Nobody from the shop taught it. You bring somebody in from the community who's already a leader and raise them up. It is important to get out of the way and let the leaders in the community lead, help to bring them to where they need to be, but to be kind of a background support system, because it is not about us, it's about the rider. And I think that's kind of a huge thing. Get out of the way and let the leaders in the community lead. It is so much more powerful to see leadership reflect the rider than to see me preaching about whatever. And kind of touched on this already, but there is nothing to lose. All of these strategies that you would be training your staff with, they are effective across the board, no matter who you are interacting with. It just so happens that it is the best way to take care of new cyclists as well, to ask questions before you tell stories, and to be open and excited about every bike that walks in the door or every bike that doesn't walk in the door. There is no uncool bike. There are just riders who need something different. That's all. And if we can take that into every interaction, I think that we're better overall. That's all that I have. I pass it back to AM.
All right, so we have shout out to Sarah, especially for putting together the slides, but based around conversations we've been having as we've been preparing. Here are some just some things to get us started, whether you're watching it live or in playbacks, of how you can actionably change things in your local community. I think if we collectively had one thing to share, it would be that this works, this is working. New York City cycling community is going in the right direction, whereas the industry in the whole is trending towards contraction. We are a model, it works. We're happy to speak about it. Right now, I can tell you, I was looking at the chat. I'm a little disappointed with the attendance on the meeting. I don't recall a meeting having this low attendance since I've been in the panel. And it feels to me like one of the aspects where if we don't take women seriously, we will never improve as an industry and we'll just lose relevance, which I think as committed cyclists want. But besides that, I don't really have anything else to say. I'm going to flip through the slides. Here's our contact information. Like I said, I think we're all pretty open to speaking. And maybe Heather or Megan, I'm interested in maybe chiming in on some of those questions in the chat. I don't know how that wants to be facilitated.
Yeah, thank you so much. What a great presentation. Lots of information there. And I do know that May is a challenging time for people to attend our webinars because the shops are busy. So I'm sure we'll get a lot of people reviewing the YouTube video. We do have some great questions in the chat. I'm just going to go ahead and read them, and whoever from the team wants to jump in to answer. So this comes from Steve, the bike guy. I've been frustrated by the industry's push for 32-inch wheels. when there is real need for bikes for smaller riders, but it feels like we are shouting to the wind. What can we as shop owners and bike riders do to encourage brands to do this better for smaller riders? And this is Kristen from Steve the Bike Guy.
I
Any
can
thoughts?
take that one because I am a brand rep. So seems like the right person to answer this question.
Thanks, Sam.
Kristen, thank you for your question. What I would recommend is to chirp in the ear of your outside rep. Make sure that they know, because I know that in the structure of specialized, it is my job to hear what you need as a dealer, as a retailer, and translate that back up. Since you have that area of separation where you need to convince someone like me to be an advocate for you, don't give up, chirp in their ear. And if they don't seem to be moving, there's always somebody above that you can go to. But I would say be vocal and don't be discouraged, because there are those of us who want to help in the industry and want to see it move this direction. Unfortunately, sometimes it takes a bit of a lift to get through to those people. So I would just encourage you to continue speaking your truth to the people that need to hear it, and starting with those that show up at your shop and are asking for your feedback. And if they're not, I mean, they should be. So
I can also chime in. I think of this as a two-pronged problem. We have the issue of we don't have the gear on the market that we need to like ideally fit the women or sell to the women, but also there is something, and the more we prove demand, because I know the industry has felt hurt or hung out to dry in the past with failed initiatives towards including women. So if we prove demand, like for example, if we sell out all the 36 centimeter bars, or the fact that we've seen what's happened with crank arms. Now you can go out and get 160s. You don't have to go aftermarket. They're trickling down onto the smaller bikes. If you can't give your customer exactly the gear that you want, you can educate them and you can encourage them to purchase the closest thing. It will help them, and it also shows to the market and to the industry there is demand.
Great answers. Thanks, Kristen, for your wonderful question. And we do have another question. We have someone who's the owner of a small cycling enterprise, and in June, they're going to earn a bike fitting certification from a female instructor. And the question is, do women find that most bike fitters struggle to provide the same level of fit service to female riders? And they're wondering if it's a knowledge gap or just hardware gap. So any thoughts there?
I mean, I can speak from experience as somebody that has had a fit with AM, who I think has sort of cultivated a specialty in supporting female writers. And I've also worked with a fitter who's a man who I think supports, maybe more men on balance. Um, I think it's probably a knowledge gap. I think this other fitter I worked with had like maybe necessarily what I would call like higher tech, but like I don't think that they were necessarily, catering to me specifically as a woman. Everything was just like the fit, the fit, the fit. Whereas AM was like a little more informed, I think, on like biomechanics of like how my body moves and moves differently than a man's body would move, and therefore is able to, I think, give me a fit that lines up a little bit more with like the needs that I would have physically. I'm also 5'1", so like I'm shorter than the average woman even, and so a lot of I think male fitters, and just fitters in general, like might not necessarily see riders as short as me and might not know. And even then, it's still a question of like, once you go through all of that, the knowledge to know, like, I'm grateful for this, male fitter, I will say, who knew where to get 155 cranks, who knew like that I was going to need shorter bars and that what would come normally integrated with the bike I was buying, like, wasn't going to work for me. So, I think it's creeping in more and more. And I think to the extent that more fitters can not necessarily just know about like the biomechanics, but like also, as Sam and I were saying, like where those components are that we're going to need to get to be more comfortable is the most important thing.
Excellent. And we have
I
a hand
will,
up.
I
Megan,
will
you have a
also,
question?
can I quickly chime in here as a
Yes,
fit?
ma'am. Yeah.
I would say that if you can look at the body more proportionally, I fit a lot of people under 5'5", and then also fit a lot of people over 6'3". And if you understand as a fitter how to fit on the edges. You'll hear a lot in the industry of the bell curve, the idea that we make product for people who are normal size, aka like 5'10". So if you know how to fit, once you go, you know that how to deviate that fit to either side, whether it's tall or small or larger or whatever it is. That is, I think, the differentiation more so than a gender thing. I'm happy to speak if you want to talk about fit, or I can connect you to other fitters that I know who might be valuable.
Excellent. And Megan, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, I appreciate all of the perspectives here and that question too. And I would almost throw like a third maybe category out there of an experience gap. The thing that comes to mind in not being a certified fitter over the years, but just working with, getting someone comfortable on their first bike, and a lot of times getting women comfortable on a bike that is my bike in the shop, which is often the only 48 centimeter frame over the years that's available on the sales floor. One of the most common things that I've heard that I've experienced personally with just short hands and um, Raynaud's syndrome affected a lot of female riders that I've known, maybe more so than men that I've ridden with in cold conditions. So it's really just like hand strength in shifting. And I've seen this come up, and I actually saw this come up this weekend on a club ride with a female rider who had not ever been told that you shouldn't have to get off of your bike to shift the front shifter, just because hand strength precluded it. And I don't, I can't say I've ever worked with anyone who's like talked down to a woman who might be a male fitter or just kind of, in that position of expertise in the shop. But I've seen men that I've worked with perplexed or not able to understand that issue because the shifter feels fine to them. It's adjusted great, it shifts great. But to me, I'm like, I have experienced this, and I almost sometimes interrupt them with like, I know exactly what you're speaking about, and it totally makes sense. I've had it too. It's not weird. Might be able to try a different shifter shape or, just make some different ergonomic changes. So I really love that you're asking that question as a fitter. And I would almost throw that out. It's maybe in a way an experience gap because you just haven't noticed that yourself and you kind of can't quickly come up with that level of like, hey, yeah, totally, that's not you. That's how this functions with, how a shorter, smaller body might function in this case.
Excellent. What a great discussion. I can't thank you all enough for sharing what's working in New York City to grow ridership, and Sam for here to be presenting on the brand side and then bringing in the fitting aspect. There's a lot here. So I really appreciate everyone. And I know we just skimmed the surface, really. We do have another topic today, so I am going to move us on. Please, if there's any other questions, please use the chat or Q&A function. So topic 2 today is Beyond the Bike Shop, and it's rethinking how we grow ridership. So are we putting too much emphasis on the bike shop as the starting point for ridership? And how can retailers meet potential riders where they already are? For examples, we could look at partnerships with local and regional coffee shops and popular cycling areas. We can reach out to active groups, other groups even like golf, hiking, and pickleball clubs. Pickleball, oh yeah, I guess so. All right, so we have a speaker to present on this one. I'm really looking forward to hearing what Brandon has to say. Brandon Morphew of Miso Partners, helping bicycle retailers with their marketing and outreach, an amazing human. So Brandon, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Heather. I really appreciate that. That's kind of you to say, and very grateful to be here. This dovetails well into the previous conversation because I think it's building on what you all were talking about. So, Brandon Morphew, I'm a founder and CEO of Miso Partners. We're a marketing agency that focuses on bike shops and bicycle manufacturers in the bike space. So we're pretty on point here. So I think we're putting too much pressure on the bike shop. It's the expectation that everything's going to start here, and you've already got a job. You're working in service. You're working in sales. You're working probably in therapy, fitting. You're doing a lot, and I think the bike clubs are great. Teams are great. I think that's a really good way to build culture. So I think if you have that's there. I think absolutely. But we don't all have always. Like that's not a choice for everyone. So I think it's it's about thinking about, more than just retail. You're a trusted partner. Like, and an interesting thing, we talk about participation a lot. The last number I saw was around a third of people participate in cycling. So that, then that doesn't mean they're riding every week or even once a month, but they have bikes. They get out and ride their bikes once a year, twice a year. And so you are that trusted source locally. And people do consistently say they want to shop at a shop. They want to go to a bike shop. Over the internet. So even though the internet is easy and it's convenience and you can't win every fight that you're having for a sale, people do prefer often to go to a place. Like that is a thing. So the bike shop, unlike Starbucks, who promise to be the third space, as you go in and you see they don't have chairs or tables, they've consistently moved away from that idea. That was their promise in the beginning. The bike shop is legitimately a third space. Now, not every bike shop has coffee and you're going to entertain people sitting down at a table, but it is a place where people gather. It's a place for community. It's a place for culture. And I think the big takeaway here is the best shops don't build community from scratch. They borrow community. So they borrow community and they get involved with groups like Always, and they become a connector in the local riding ecosystem. It's much more powerful to be that connector than to try to manufacture this on your own. I mean, that we heard, I think, years of investment to get Always to where it is. That's not something that's easy. And if you're running a business, a bike shop, it's probably not where you're going to be investing the majority of your time. You're doing a lot. This is the trap. Community building is a full-time job. I think that whether or not it is someone's full-time job, the people that put volunteer hours, the people that put the time in to build community within cycling are spending a lot of time. I'm involved in some bike coaching, some high school bike racing, and the volunteers are putting in a tremendous amount of time. So building community, building that is a lot of work. You've already got a full-time job. You're already managing service and sales at a retail location. What happens often is it's a good idea, but it feels like the bar is too high, it's too overwhelming, and I'm not even going to start. It's just, that's too much to do. I'm not going to invest in that space. So it's not for a lack of care. Most shops are not looking at this out of it's just throwing up your arms. I've got too much on my plate. This is not a thing that I can invest my time in. The bandwidth is not there. So not looking to create something new, not create a new like a huge effort. This is really about it's not to own it. I think that's maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know where it comes from, but we often, when we own the business and we're not an entrepreneur and we're managing all these things, we feel this like imperative to own it all. Like it needs to have our shop name on the back of the jersey. It needs to be, it needs to be our ride. It needs to be, all of these. There's this a little bit maybe gatekeeping, not really gatekeeping, but it is this need. The reality is you don't have to own it. You can get a ton of value out of playing with the right groups and making a decision about the role you want to play. So the shop isn't the engine, right? It's not the sole engine. The shop is the trusted connector. These opportunities exist. So we talked about coffee shop, we talked about schools, families. There's lots of community groups, PTAs. One thing that actually just came up today, and this is a conversation that's happening, I would say, in every community right now, are e-bikes with kids. Every community is having this conversation, and almost every police department, if they're active on social, is actively like vilifying e-bikes on social media. Like they're talking about, and the reality is these accidents are happening. But what I'm not seeing from the police departments is the bike rodeo. We used to have these great events where kids got a helmet and the local bike shop came out and invested in the relationship with the police department. It sounds old school, but there's a whole bunch of people. A lot of those police officers own a bicycle, at least a third of them, I would say, at a minimum. And so they're out there riding a bike on a regular basis. They don't want to be just always talking about bad news. They don't want to always they want to talk about some good things. If you look at their social feed, you'll see. So the goal here is find the community partners that make sense, the folks that are going to help drive culture for you. Riders are already there. Like the people in that group at the coffee shop, a percentage are riders. The people at the police department, a percentage are riders. The yoga shop. All of these places are also, we wear lots of hats. Someone may be like all bike all the time, a lot of people here, but most of us have different roles we play in life. So we're at the yoga studio, we're at the PTA meeting. What you can add as a shop is your expertise. You can bring in that tubeless clinic. You can bring in and you can really, people are dying for events. They're dying for things to do. They're looking for things to get involved with. You have a value you can add. And the thing that's great about this is way more sustainable if you work with other groups that have energy, that already have momentum, than starting from zero. This is overwhelming if you're trying to start everything from zero. So the roles of the modern bike shop, to connect, energy is out there. So go where the energy is. Don't try to make the energy. You can do that as well, but there's, great things happening, get involved. And then lower the friction. That first experience with your shop should be really easy. It shouldn't be intimidating. I think, even after all these conversations, this is something I have been hearing. I'm an old person, so I've got older. I'm in my 50s. This intimidating bike shop conversation is something I heard in the 90s when I was working in bike shops. This we didn't call it bro culture, but this intimidating space that, it's about the tech, it's about, knowing what specs are on the bike, it's about like a certain type of some people love that. That's great. And entertain that group of people with that. But for the new person who's coming in, that's a pretty rough way to experience the retail space. So how can you make it really, really easy for that person to come in, especially in these new groups, if you're going to invest in this space, invest in community. So think about beginner rides, think about clinics, family-friendly formats, the easy, simple entry points, and warm invitations. Open your arms, welcome people in. I know it's silly, but the wine and cheese stuff, it still works. It's definitely a thing that successful shops do. They have these events, and it does happen. But it's hard to do it on your own. But if you have a community, you can borrow and bring them in and co-opt. You can make these very successful. These events can be very successful. The emotional shift matters. So confidence, comfort, belonging, being part of something, being part of ridership, being part of a community, being part of growth. And this is, just it's about the riders, but it's also just a great way to become relevant to this group. It's a great way to connect with folks. Not every community idea is right for every shop. So what matters is choosing the next move that fits your capacity, local context, and customer mix. So some things are simple and powerful. Reoccurring rides, absolutely. Group rides are great. Partner clinics, better invitations, clearer follow-up, having nurturing campaigns attached to events and activities. Some bigger plays might be right later. So youth programs that's a big lift, especially if you're doing it on your own. Town partnerships, signature events, these things take time, and you have to sort of put it out there as something you want to do, but it might not be ready today. And so this matrix here, the sort of what's going to be the high impact, what's going to be the easier or more difficult effort, it just gives you a way to think about the events. This is, old school Eisenhower matrix here. So And this is a way to think clearly and realistically. So is this going to be a hard lift? Is it going to be an easier lift? Is it going to make an impact? Is it not going to make? Obviously, the things that are in the top left box are going to be more value. So it's going to be easier to execute, and it's going to be more impact into your business. And then I hammer this home with my partners, but consistency beats complexity. So rather than doing something really cool one time, do something that's a little more mundane every week or every month. So you have that consistency. So people, you could build an audience, you could build an expectation, you could build a community. And then just a way to frame this up, that first touch point, obviously super valuable, like having the initial, but if you think about a customer journey and a funnel, right? The first time you interact with someone is much more about awareness. It's about like, oh, you exist. That's the real opportunity is what happens next. So this is just one way to think about that customer journey as they're coming into your shop. They ride, they visit the shop, they come by for service. There's follow-ups after the service. You have automated nurturing campaigns that, thank them, ask them for a review, remind them to come back at a certain time frame. And then that follow-up leads to loyalty. So whether that's actual loyalty programs or just customer loyalty. Community only becomes foot traffic when there's a clear return path. And these are the small systems that make a difference. Invitation, reminder, what's the next event, service follow-up, reason to come back, giving a call to action, what's going on. And I'm talking about, email marketing, SMS marketing, social media, all those touch points that you have. I'm not getting into those here, but that's where that you would be doing these things. And the goal, I think, is not attendance. It's not to get more sales. I mean, it is part of it, but it's really about building relationships. I mean, if you can be a connector and you can be a trusted resource when it comes to bike in your community, that's where people point. That's where they send. That can be those relationships, and community can be a long-term asset without feeling transactional. And then just closing the lens again, bike clubs are great, bike teams are great. I think that's I believe in that as a real solid part of it. But I think the opportunity is to be that anchor, that cultural anchor, that community, that third space. It's appreciated. Thanks for listening to my spiel.
Brandon, I always love to hear from you and have you present. I like how it's like the goal is not just that first transaction, it's after that. So you shared lots of great things there. I can't thank you enough. Any questions for Brandon, please place into chat and we can discuss those as we go. There is an additional question for Sam here. Sam, if you'd share the resources you feel Specialized has given to help build community and connect to community in New York City. So for retailers specifically.
Thanks for the question, Jess. I would say we, as a corporate owned store, we had a marketing budget that we can use. I would say though that the industry has kind of been patterning towards not having those same kind of financial resources available at the store level. And so it has really required some creative thinking and trying to move ourselves away from being, I don't know, what am I trying to say here? Trying to not pin the relationship on a financial commitment to help people buy, but rather not wait for resources to come from above, but look at the resources that we actually have, like good people who can answer questions, who can provide support, and think about those as the resources that we actually have. Because when I always found, and this isn't a slight towards Specialized or any of the many brands I've worked for, relying on those resources to come from elsewhere or from above is often feels like a bit of a trap. I think it's better for us to look at what we have that we can give that maybe isn't financially based, that we know we can make happen. And I found those to be the more powerful things in the always relationship anyways, rather than a whatever percentage off discount or whatever budget we have to put on an event. The ability to simply open the doors, which is a resource that we have by way of managing the shop.
I love that. So it's about the people, the energy, and not so much the financial. Yeah, I love
That's
that.
what I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, and then one more question for Brandon, and then we'll adjourn for today. How important is the ability to track return on investment on events, especially for a smaller shop that wants to start intentionally scheduling? But should there be something in place to track that return on investment?
Yeah, I think all of your marketing activity, all of your activity in general should be measured. So I like to go back to your goals, like what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? And then what are the things you can measure? So sometimes you can't always measure the outcomes that you're looking for, but getting people to sign up, giving something away so that you can capture signups. So that could be a gift card, that brings them back, raffle up, depends on the state you're in, give away a gift card. But there's, lots of ways to get people engaged. And so I would absolutely recommend tracking, measuring, and it just depends like what your outcomes are, like what your goals are, and then, how are you going to accomplish those goals? And then along the way, so you might have goals that are around the participants, but you might also have goals around how many messages did I send? How many parties did I engage? Like
Yeah.
wellness studios, cafes, like how many other partners did I engage with to try to make this thing happen? So it just depends on what the activity is. But yeah, I think, and then tagging in your POS system, like if you could get into the habit of like, where do they come? How do they get into my, and that's just some of those best practices can be challenging, but if you set up a form and you have a QR code and they sign up and they drop right into your POS system, then they can automatically get tagged. Some of these things are, you can do, some of them are a little harder. It depends on, I know Lightspeed can be tough sometimes.
Yeah.
And
So the answer is yes, tracking return on investment is important, and getting some systems in place can help you. And you can track attendance, you could track email capture, you could track partnerships formed. I mean, it could be a slew of things. So,
yeah.
wow, what a great discussion, Megan. Thank you for the work behind the scenes to get this together. Thank you for our panel members who volunteered your time. Our next event is Tuesday, August 25th at 1 Eastern. I see the link is already in the chat. Panel members, thank you for your time. Those in attendance, thank you for attending. And we wish you all a great afternoon. Thank you again.
Hey everyone, it's Frances, and I want to talk about community, specifically the Canadian bicycle retail community. For years, Canadian retailers have traveled to our US summits. You've told us you want something closer to home, something that speaks directly to your market. We hear you. The NBDA Retailer Summit Canada happens this year, July 29th and 30th, and it's built for you. Main stage sessions in the morning featuring Canadian retail leaders, interactive flow sessions in the afternoon where you problem solve with peers facing the same challenges. We're diving into what matters, exceeding customer expectations in the Canadian market, winning inventory strategies for your season, staff development, service center profitability, and the e-mobility opportunity in Canada. And here's what makes this extra special. Your distributors are already behind you. HLC, OGC, LTP, and Giant are supporting this summit because they're invested in your success. Visit nbda.com and register today. Summit Canada, this year, July 29th and 30th.
Thanks for spending time with us on Bicycle Retail Radio. If this episode resonated with you, subscribe and share it with another retailer who could use the insight. Join us every week for new conversations and fresh perspectives to keep you ahead of the curve. The NBDA is constantly creating events, webinars, and resources built specifically for bicycle retailers. Check out what's coming up at nbda.com. Shout out to Frances Abbott for today's graphics. Interested in sponsoring an episode or know someone we should talk to? Head to nbda.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time.